The following campaign was chosen by our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. You can head there too and join in to help choose which game we'll play next. There's a poll out there every month. And this month, they've chosen a really interesting game. This game is based on real events at a real time. World War II, Soviet Russia. On October 8th, 1941, Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin issued an order allowing women to serve in combat. 3 women's Air Force units were formed, one of them the 588. The 588 was all women, mostly women in their late teens and early 20s. Their mission, harassment bombing. And they would fly missions from then until the very end of the war. Many of those pilots flew over 800 times, and they flew in biplanes built in the 1920s. Wood and canvas planes used for crop dusting and training exercises. They were expected to fail. And even though those planes were obsolete and slow, they figured out a couple of tricks, like cutting their engines and flying in quietly, dropping the bombs with nothing but the sound of wind around them. And that sound sounded a little bit like broomsticks, which is why the Germans gave them their name, the Night Witches. Now, this is our first episode in this campaign, and as such, we're going to be making our characters. And what characters these were, I hope we did it justice to the history of the women of the 588. In the meantime, sit back and relax, because even though this is sounding like a serious historical drama we're about to play, don't worry. We're still the Terrible Warriors.
Hello there, terrible listeners. I was going to say terrible warriors. You're terrible warriors too. Here we are, the next campaign. And Happy New Year. It's 2019 now. It's not when we recorded it, but that's probably why I still sound dead inside. We don't have the refreshing feel of a blank slate of a new year yet, just the crushing oppression of December. Here we are. You have been voting for new games every month since we started this season in September, and we've had a really fun time playing through the games you've picked, but you've been picking sequels this entire time. We returned to Star Trek. We returned to Masks. This month is different. You actually suggested Night Witches by Jason Morningstar. That's very cool. However, I have a bone to pick with you, dear listener. Up until the day the poll ended, we were supposed to be playing Dogs in the Vineyard. And that is the game I had prepared to play, and the game that I understood. That was the game that was leading the polls for weeks. And I even posted on that Friday night, we're playing Dogs in the Vineyard, and put it all on social media, because there's only 7 hours left in the poll. And then you changed your votes. And a lot of new people signed up, and thank you for joining us on Patreon, and we love you, and we really appreciate you supporting the show. And the last second, at the 11th hour, the vote changed to put Night Witches in the lead. And I have spent the last 5 days learning how to play this game.
Crash coursing this game.
Literally crash coursing how to play Night Witches. Now, this is a game I have wanted to play for a very long time. It's been on my radar for a very long time. When did this game come out? 2014. So it's not that old, but it's almost as old as the podcast. And Jason Morningstar is an author, Bully Pulpit Games, also works on Fiasco, if you've heard of Fiasco. We've played Fiasco on the podcast in the past. He also did Night Witches. It's a Powered by Apocalypse game. It does change some of the expectations about Powered by Apocalypse, in mainly that the GM role is shared around the table, which is kind of interesting. And it is set in the very real world and real experiences of the 588 Air Force Regiment from the Soviet Army during World War II. What made them remarkable is they were an all-women Air Force unit that was set up after the war had started, and the Soviets needed more soldiers, and they allowed women to join the army. Originally intended to be reservists, the 588 ended up on the front line after only 4 months of training. And their mission was a mission of harassment, nightly night bombing raids on German targets. They didn't have much equipment to do that bombing, and were given even less. Everyone expected them to fail. They were a sideshow afterthought. Let the women fly, whatever. And they were given World War I era biplanes to fly their missions in, but they did have a few advantages, as the women found out. These biplanes flew slower than the stall speed of modern planes, which made them incredibly hard to hunt. They had an incredibly high glide ratio, which allowed them to cut their engines and silently glide down to their targets and drop their bombs and then turn their engines on and blast away. And using that, and they were also relatively easy to handle and learn because of their nature being crop dusters. Like, they were known as agricultural planes before the war began. And they were easier to repair and cheaper to replace. And so they did this campaign just to harass. Some nights wouldn't kill any Germans. Some nights they wouldn't even get to their target. Some nights they didn't have bombs, so they would drop rail ties instead. And but it was just a night. It was a mission of continuous harassment that caused madness among the German troops, because not only were they never knowing where they would strike next, they also knew that every time these bombers struck, because the biplanes were so identifiable after the fact by their click, click, click in the engines, they all knew that there were women flying these planes. And for a society even more split by gender at that time in Germany compared to what it was like in Soviet Russia, this drove those soldiers up the wall to know that there was women who was bombing them every night and not letting them sleep and driving them crazy and blowing up their munitions depot and all this going on. And of course, when the Soviets figured out that, oh, the Germans really hate it when we send women to the front line, they sent more women to the front line, right? Like that's just
to be
what they needed to do, because the Soviets had this interesting paradox in that they had in their constitution, in writing, full equality of the sexes. But then as Stalin took over, traditional values and all this kind of stuff started being talked about, and there wasn't really equality because it was a woman's duty to the state to have children, to the point where there was even a medal given to women who would have 7 or more children. And so when the 588 came around and the Night Witches are flying around in their planes, they were at a time also being patriotic to their country and following through with the ideals of the party and all that kind of stuff, but also shirking all of their responsibilities and traditions and everything that was expected of them. During the full time of the 588, only one birth happened for an all-woman regiment of 200 over the course of 3 years. So that was seen as this disgraceful thing. And so the Night Witches the name was a name given to them by the Germans, right? Like the Night Witches are coming. A similar story from a Canadian perspective, where the Devil's Brigade, which was a special forces before the special forces were a thing, they were to go behind enemy lines and just take out small little, blow up a small place here or there, and then they started leaving stickers saying the worst is yet to come, written in German. They were led by an indigenous Canadian commander and were half American, half Canadian. The British came up with the idea, well, this is suicide, so give it to the Canadians. And the Canadians went, and when they pulled all the soldiers off of the Western Front to get ready for D-Day, they left this Devil's Brigade behind, only 20 men, to handle the entire front line. And it's just said, hold the line, we'll be right back, because they were ready to invade Normandy. And they decided to then do a campaign of terror instead, where they would sneak across enemy lines wearing all black. They would they would cover everything in charcoal so there was no shine on their metal, and they would blow up one place or take out one gun, or just one. That was it each night. And then they would leave back with a little sticker, the worst is yet to come. And they actually took 200 yards of territory.
Wow.
Over no man's land, and found a diary from a commander that said, we cannot escape, the Devil's Brigade is everywhere. And that's similar to how the Night Witches got their name. The Germans ended up becoming very superstitious when things started not going their way. And so anyways, they're heroes. They're very interesting, complicated stories, and everyone wanted them to fail. And so we're going to be playing these people today. And I know that's 10 minutes in, and it's a lot of backstory on this. But this is a different kind of game than we're used to, where we're not just creating a world of our own creation. We're setting it in the real world. In fact, we're going to be setting it at a specific year in March of 1943. So we'll get all into all of that. But before we actually introduce our characters, maybe it's time I introduce my players who've been sitting around the table making eye contact, going, oh, wow, ooh, yee, ooh, as I'm telling this story. We have players new and old here at the table. Joining us, returning after a short hiatus. Tales from the Loop was the last one you were here for, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that is correct. Welcome back, Joshua.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, welcome.
Joshua Barbeau. You guys all know me as the terrible computer from Paranoia and various other games I played in.
Yeah, and Chaotic Rogue Entertainment still a thing?
Chaotic Rogue Entertainment. Yes, I am from Chaotic Rogue Entertainment.
Sorry, I'm just going to do your job for you.
Thank you for plugging my thing that I forgot to plug. It's early and I haven't drank enough tea yet. Yes, Chaotic Rogue Entertainment. You can go to our website, chaoticrogue.com. We have all kinds of stuff. We have primarily a Dungeons and Dragons focus, but we're trying to branch out.
Got articles and tips on writing and running as a GM, and
absolutely,
which I know. That's near and dear to you as a GM for hire and all that.
Yes, and if you're in the Toronto area and you're looking for a dungeon master to play D&D with, go to dmondemand.ca.
There you are. So that's enough plugging from Joshua. How about some plugging from Neil Tavares? Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Hey, Neil Tavares, Neil T Tattoos. Coming on back for something very different, very fun for me, I think.
Yeah, you were here for, we've played Star Trek now and Masks, and they've all had very different tones, and so now this couldn't be more removed from the two of them. So,
very much so.
It's one of the coolest things I think I like about this hobby and this show is all the different crazy stories we were going to do. You were getting ready to come and play Dogs in the Vineyard.
I was.
Which was going to be teenage demon hunters and a Mormon alternate history.
I was totally going to get myself a southern accent and everything.
Yeah. Now we're all on the Russian front. So here,
I'm not going to attempt that one.
No, let's not. Let's just use our own accents. Actually, there was an interesting article I was reading on using accents in gameplay and how that's not appropriate at all. Pick a name, pick a demeanor, pick a characterization, but to use a caricature of an accent, know what you're doing as an actor. Take some improv courses and see how that is. It's a little different if you're a British accent doing an American accent versus Canadian accent as a white man emulating Indian or Chinese or Japanese.
Oh yeah, totally.
Maybe don't.
But when it's Russian,
maybe don't. Russian, yeah. Certainly. I use a very offensive Russian accent in our Paranoia game at Con Bravo, where I played as Com R Rad.
Other passing white kind of accents of the world.
Which
the Paranoia game at Con Bravo kind of demanded certain
things.
Aesthetics. We'll call them aesthetics.
Interesting connection there with Paranoia, though, is reading up on the history of Night Witches and it coming off of the Great Purge in Russia in the 1930s and how much Paranoia shares in common with the historical Great Purge. There was nothing comedic about the Great Purge. It was just as a time of everyone declaring everyone else a traitor. And at its peak in the Great Purge, 1,000 people were being executed a day. Which somehow that exact scenario also describes Paranoia, but Paranoia is slapstick. So that's interesting. New to the podcast. You answered the call. A friend of ours, a friend of the show. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
Hi, Joe.
I'm super excited to be here.
And you haven't played a Powered by Apocalypse game.
I have not. I've played a lot of...
I'm not. This isn't cred checking. I'm just curious to know where your hobby background is.
Yeah, so I've played a lot of D&D, and I've played a lot of D&D inspired games, and I also used to play a lot of White Wolf stuff.
Oh, cool.
That was a long time ago.
We
won't talk about how long ago that was.
I have a friend. It wasn't White Wolf. He wrote for Vampire.
Oh, no way.
And then Derek the Bard, who's been on the podcast in the past, LARPed a lot of White Wolf as well. Did a lot of mage LARPing in Toronto and then took that out.
Whatever that is afterwards.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to LARP White Wolf, but I never did.
Yeah, rest in peace, though, eh? White Wolf just isn't what it used to be.
No.
At all.
No.
As a person who played EVE Online, I feel like I should apologize because it was CCP that I think put the nail in the coffin on that. But we played a Mages game on Terrible Warriors. I can't remember which one it was, Mage the Ascending or something. That was kind of neat. It was really cool. And I had a roommate who played Mage a lot and was trying to get me into that world of play. It's just, I'm just a love of the one shots because I can't commit
Yeah.
playing the same game over and over again.
It's hard.
Same reason why I've never done a LARP is I just don't want to do that once because then it feels like you got to buy into
No, there's one that's
the actual
not
time.
Fantasy Alive or something like that, and it's an ongoing one. I'm going to probably jump in on there one
Oh,
time.
well, tell us all about it.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
There is a LARP I want to do on the podcast. Also, Jason Morningstar is the author of that, the same one as Night Witches. It's called Welcome Guests, and it is an 8-player LARP, best played around a cooked meal served
I'm in.
at the table.
Yeah.
And 5 of the people are family sitting down for a meal, and 3 of the people are strangers who, for whatever reason, their car broke down, bad weather, they got lost. They've knocked on the door and they're looking for assistance, and they've been invited in for dinner while they wait for their car to be fixed, or the tow to arrive, or the weather to let up.
No murder.
The 5 members of the family are a cannibalistic cult,
Yeah, I
and they are
figured that's where it's
they are
going.
deciding during the game whether or not to eat the 3 strangers or to invite them to join the family, or like a mix of the two.
That's kind of bad either way.
And
That's where you have to be like, I'm
and-
so down. No
and
problem.
it's a comedy.
I'll get ketchup. I'll
And
be
it's
right
a comedy
back.
played over over a live meal. And so as you're eating the meal, you start passing notes and talking to each other and deciding like, so are we into this person? And in one play group, I heard like they married the grandfather into the family and ate their brother and then had their heart eaten during the wedding ceremony. And
How romantic.
it's nonsense.
So romantic.
So it's like Hannibal and
But, like,
Chainsaw
not.
Massacre and Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of all rolled into one.
Good
It
lord.
sounds beautiful.
Good God.
So I really want to play that, but I don't know how to do that on the podcast. My plan was the 3 strangers would each have recording devices on them, and the game would be recorded like a found footage show.
Ooh.
And then we would all break it down and talk afterwards. But something like that, Welcome Guests, feels like it would be best played with like probably a video camera. Just record the dinner table and do it like at an event.
And a recipe book.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I actually have a friend.
Fava beans.
I got a friend who own a house, and we can play the game in their like big, nice dining room. I've got another friend who is a wine reviewer who has connections with sous chefs in the city, so they would like make the meal and pair with the wine. So it would be like an event. It's just having to get all those ducks in a row. But I really want to do welcome guests sometime soon.
That could be really interesting,
Yeah.
especially if you had a whole kind of like, hey, pitch in kind of thing. Win your seat. That'd be cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's only 8 people, so if I had the 2 people who own the house, 3 people who own the house, then myself is 4, then the person running the game is 5, then the person bringing the wine is 6, the person cooking is 7, so now everyone else is fighting over 1 remaining seat.
That's a pretty good fight. That's a
We
fight
could
I
call
wanna
it the
see.
Hunger Game.
Yeah.
Because it's a meal. Oh, wait,
But,
that name's already been
Just
taken.
tie them at the wrists and handle both knives and see
right.
what happens.
Let's get into this game. So you are going to be playing women in the 588 Regiment during World War II, an all-women Air Force group. You have, at this time, I can bring up this one-shot page. We are playing Soviet women in an all-female Night Bomber Regiment during World War II. We pilots, navigators, mechanics, and political officers. Our mission is to harass the German army, which has invaded our country. The war is brutal and horrific. We fly obsolete biplanes and drop bombs, or when we don't have bombs, railroad ties on the Germans. Things are desperate. It is incredibly dangerous. We fly in darkness, sometimes a dozen missions each night. The Soviet army wishes we didn't exist, and nobody expects us to succeed. We are going to succeed anyways. So the first thing we need to do is choose our playbooks and make our characters. So ahead of time, I had you all look through and pick it out. And Joe, which playbook have you picked up and are interested in playing?
I picked Pigeon.
And so why did you pick out the pigeon?
Honestly, the androgynous move. So we each playbook has its own set of moves, and I really liked the idea of getting to act like a man instead of a hooligan. I thought that would be kind of a cool...
You won't start with any of those moves. You'll have to get them when you get an advancement. But yeah, looking ahead to the moves of what you want is it gives you a tone of also like what to play into. And it describes pigeons are gregarious, not afraid to get their feathers dirty, resourceful and down to earth. They are also vaguely ridiculous and most comfortable in a crowd.
And I also get to make hateful boyfriend jokes.
And you also get to make hateful boyfriend jokes being a pigeon. And...
But that's not the reason I chose them.
That's a great game, and everyone listening should play Hatoful Boyfriend.
And so down the list, you're also picking a role. Choosing one of these roles, we might be changing them as we get marks in the game. In that there's bits, or whenever we change a duty, we're probably not going to change a duty station in our playthrough today. Of those roles, which one were you interested in?
I think I really liked Protector. I like the idea of kind of this brash person who also really kind of looks out for their flock.
Yeah, so the Protector has a fierce loyalty to their sisters in arms, are driven to apply their skills and courage in the service of something bigger than themselves. For them, the war is personal. Play a Protector if you'd rather take a bullet yourself than see a comrade hurt. The other roles for everyone else listening: Adventurer, Dreamer, Leader, Misanthrope, and Zealot. And working our way through this, you have the role and your look and background see under look and background is circle one from each category. Have you circled them yet, or should I come back to you?
I have not.
Okay, so go and circle those, and I'll come back to you in a minute. They're different for each playbook because they're there to kind of help paint the tone of that background. So Neil, what nature did you choose?
I was gonna go with Protector, but I think
Oh,
I'll
nature,
try
the nature,
or the nature.
the name of the whole playbook at the top.
Oh,
With the
sorry,
bird.
my mistake. Owl.
The owl, and you can pick the same roles. That's fine. I just want different natures
Yeah,
because
yeah.
roles are fluid and they're going to change through play.
Fair.
So the owl, quiet and observant, among the most contemplated of birds. Unlike hawks, they're happy to watch and wait. Owls are solitary predators who feast on the bones of the weak. What appealed to the owl for
I
you?
mean, it was pretty like surface level. I just really like owls. They're really neat. So
There
I was
you
like,
go.
let's go with that.
Let's go with
A
owl.
little bit of the wise.
That's
a little
fine,
bit
too.
of the nice.
And what role? You were thinking of Protector, but you were changing
I
your
think I'll
mind?
try Adventurer.
Adventurer. And adventurers are, if they aren't behind the yoke and throttle of an airplane, they're thinking about how to get behind the yoke and throttle of an airplane. You also get bonuses to moves. When you bring a plane wheels down well, adventurers adept at the wheels down move and advance between duty stations if at some point you walked away from an utterly wrecked aircraft. So it's being an adventurer. If you're able to land a damaged plane, which is what wheels down means, you'll automatically advance because you're an adventurer. And for Protector, one of the rules there is you repair well. You're handy with an aircraft. Repair and advance between duty stations if at some point you save someone's life. So whenever you save someone's life, you get a hold that you can then cash in on a repair that will allow you to also advance when you do that. So you get a bit there. Joshua, what were you
Yes.
thinking here?
Well, I took the Sparrow.
You took the Sparrow.
And I didn't take the Sparrow because I looked at the moves and I liked the moves, or I didn't take the Sparrow because I identified necessarily with that bird. I simply took the Sparrow because when you were describing it to us briefly before we turned on the mics, you said the Sparrow was the coward.
They are nervous, timid, and prone to flying away at the first sign of trouble.
And that sounded like the most fun to play. So that's the one I took.
Yeah. So you've picked, and of the roles, what were you interested in picking for the roles?
Well, when you described the roles to us, the first one that jumped out at me was Dreamer, and I wanted to play Dreamer, but then I read that Dreamers are good at informal interviews, and I don't think that this character is good at interviews, so I switched to Misanthrope.
So the informal interviews are going back to historical Soviet during this time. After the Great Purge, there was a great amount of paranoia in that world. And the regiment has in its officer rank and its high officers a politic, a political officer who's there to like make sure everyone's following the articles of the party. And they represent the NKVD. Whenever something happens where you're not following orders, you're not doing things right, you're suspected of lesbianism or a crime or any other number of things that might get you in trouble, you will sit down for an informal interview with the NK. It's an informal interview. We're just having a chat. We're just going to get to talk. And they're going to ask you some questions. You're going to have to roll for it. If you're lying or telling the truth or whatever, it will depend on which stat you roll into. And then things will either go well for you and carry on, have a nice day, or you will find yourself being reassigned to a new duty at an internment camp. Because you don't get demoted in this game, you only get promoted. If you do something that requires a demotion, you are just shipped away to a prison camp instead, where you serve out a sentence, and then you return to the game at some time later after, having been rehabilitated. Because they're also short on soldiers, so they're not just going to get rid of you that much, unless you do something extremely egregious.
All the lesbianism.
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah, all of it.
Usually the lesbianism, which is it's just a thing of the times. By the way, I guess like content note. This is set in the 40s in Soviet Russia. So as it was put, as I read, the laws on homosexuality were equal and legal in the 18 or 16 or whatever. But then Stalin changed those rules in the 30s, but only for men. So men suspected of homosexuality are given like a 5-year prison sentence. Women suspected of lesbianism are sent off to a mental institution, and it's seen as a mental illness, and are rehabilitated, given some group therapy, some propaganda treatment, and then once they have repented their evil ways, they are sent back to duty, probably even more emboldened than before. So
yeah, I picked.
you picked Sparrow, and you were thinking of Dreamer, but not.
I was thinking of Dreamer, but then I was like, well, I don't think this character is good at interviews. But so I switched to Misanthrope. But yeah, Misanthrope.
Misanthrope. You're good at scrounging, and you are playing a misanthrope if you know it all and don't care if your hands get dirty. You're an excellent scrounger.
She cares if her hands get dirty. Okay, maybe not misanthrope.
You're an excellent scrounger, and you advance between duty stations if at some point you bucked against the patriarchy and got in trouble for it.
Oh, that sounds like her.
Yeah, that's the misanthrope. That's what I mean by getting your hands dirty.
Done.
So for me, I chose the Raven. The Raven is intelligent and curious, and also a carrion bird with a stubborn disregard for propriety. They aren't afraid to make a scene. And I thought it would be fun to play a zealot, someone who understands their real mission is to help develop political consciousness across the regiment. So when we're talking about informal interviews and stuff, probably I'm snitching to the NKVD and passing all of that on to them. So
great. So look in background?
Because I'm playing the role of the GM at the start, but I'm also creating a character because the GM role may pass around the table as we play. So I was having a look here. So again, looking in background, circle one from each category. The only person, and I don't think we're playing that person, is one of the roles. I think it's the
owl.
Not the owl. One of them has a blank under sex. Everyone else has female already written in, but one of them doesn't because they're the only ones who can.
Well, mine has female or concealed.
Or concealed, yeah. So
I could choose to be
the sparrow. The sparrow is the one where everyone in society believes you're a woman, but what is gender anyways? And you're still in an all-women regiment. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're the only exception to that with the sparrow is you can opt to be someone else. But for the rest of us, it's an all-women detachment.
Yeah, I picked female anyway. So is everyone still picking? Should I just read mine since I picked already? Well, my name is Marina. My name is Marina Svetkova.
Sergeants and junior lieutenants. Sergeants you'll have a bonus to a stat, but you don't have a rank. Junior lieutenants will outrank you. They've gone through officer training, but they won't have any bonuses to their stats. So you
commissioned versus non-commissioned.
Yeah, commissioned versus non-commissioned. So one has like the street smarts, and one has like the things that go with it. So you can choose one or the other, and that's fine.
I'm not sure how well my character does with authority, so let's go with sergeant.
I mean, I picked junior lieutenant, but I don't think my character does well with authority either. I think it's just a mistake that she got through.
The names are like there's some options there. And there's also a cheat sheet I gave you if you want to pick a completely different name than from the ones that are chosen in front of you.
Yeah, I named myself Marina Svetkova. All female names apparently need to end in an A.
Yeah.
and the male version of the name doesn't have the A. So, for example, if I have a brother, his last name would be Svetkov, not Svetkova.
Yeah. And you're not adding any moves just yet. We're going to be going through, though, because we're going to be advancing our characters 4 times. So you're going to get an option there to pick out moves. Rolling into it then, after now having looked through our look and backgrounds, we'll go in reverse order there. So for myself, because I guess I went last, it was I decided, okay, if I'm playing a Raven Zealot, then I should have, my name is Vera, just Vera, thanks. Gramova. So everyone has like a name and like a nickname, and then their surname. And nicknames are important too. They're like your call sign. That's what your friends call you when you got regard to you. I don't have I'm just Vera. Thanks. That's my name. So Vera Gramova. Regulation uniform, angular body, plain face. I'm from Moscow, of course, and I write home to mother and father, who are still alive, and everyone's doing great. So that's
What a good daughter you are.
just Vera, thanks. Joshua, what did you write down here?
Well, my name is Marina Svetkova, as I've said a couple times, but my nickname is Sparrow because I'm unoriginal. My sex is female. Uniform I picked is ill-fitting, so I picture her as wearing a uniform that's 2 sizes too large.
Yeah.
Body, she's beautiful. Is the one I picked, but she doesn't necessarily look it all the time. She doesn't keep up with her makeup and things. Her hands are busy. She's always got to have something that she's working with. Her hometown is Verkhoyansk. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Siberia, basically. And she writes back home to no one.
Oh.
To no one.
Writing back home is like there's a move in here called reaching out. You can always reach out to people that you write to as well. The letters will get mailed.
My options for writing back home was I could write back home to no one, I could write back home to myself, or I could write back home to my dead child. So I picked no one.
Yeah, those are all pretty depressing.
Yeah.
Write to myself because I have no one to write to. Write to my dead child because I have no one to write to.
Or
just write to nobody.
No one because I have no one to write to.
I have no one to write to.
So Neil, what tell me about your looks and background. What's your pilot's name?
My pirate's name is...
pilot.
Pardon?
Did you say pirate?
Pirate.
No, I
You
said
said
pirate.
pirate.
I heard pirate.
I
I'm
said
down
Justin
for
said
pirates as
Airwoman.
well, but I'm
Your
a pilot.
airwoman's name.
Valeria, or Lyra, Kazakova.
Okay.
And she has a regulation uniform. She is a very graceful individual, honest face, grew up in Moscow, writes back to her granddad.
Nice. And I'm looking for there's this.
I had one of those
quote
dead
in here.
husbands as well. That's what's writing to dead people.
There's
They're not going to get it.
A lot of people at this stage in 1942, a lot of people in Russia have died.
Really?
So people would just write letters to
It's ambiguous.
those who were
Keep sane.
passed on, so they could just keep. Yeah, exactly.
It's ambiguous whether or not you know that the husband's dead. You're writing back to him. He's dead.
No,
Do you know that you're writing?
sure.
Oh, that's interesting. It could be that too. Writing back to him, not realizing you get home to
He
a
hasn't
whole bunch
responded
of
in
envelopes.
3 months. I don't know.
Joe,
Yes.
who are you? Oh, I should be. Where did I put my blank piece of paper? I should be writing these notes down. Sorry, guys.
So I am Mariam Pomelova.
Mm-hmm.
There's no nickname listed
That's
for
fine.
Mariam.
Miriam?
Mine neither.
Miriam, yeah. And my uniform's greasy. Things are very practical around here.
Sure.
You work on the machines, get some grease. It's kind of hard to get out. I have a very strong build. My hands are calloused. It's, part of the job. I was born in Novosibirsk and lived there until I got the call for duty. And I write back home to my sister Sonia,
Nice.
who is very much alive.
This rule book,
Oh, nice.
So
Very,
my
very
granddad.
nice.
very much alive. Just like Vera's.
Yes, just like Vera.
Yes, we don't write to dead people.
No,
That's
no,
strange.
no dead people.
No, my
It's very
granddad's
morbid.
alive.
It's
No,
very
my
morbid.
granddad's alive.
So
Sorry.
I didn't have an option.
The rule
for a
book
living
is full of quotes by the women from this regiment, and one of these quotes here, just thinking of the sparrow back, I found it on page 14, Some girls thought it unpatriotic to look attractive. I argued that we should. I said, imagine that I have a forced landing at a male fighter airdrome. Soldiers are rushing to my aircraft because they know that the crew is female. I, absolutely dashing, slide out of the cockpit and take off my helmet, and my golden curly hair streams down my shoulders. Everyone is awed by my dazzling beauty. They all desperately fall in love with me. And that's Yevgenia of the HSU.
That sounds like my character. That's my character right there. Sold.
So we have role, background, and stats. Each player describes their character as a raw recruit, still in civilian clothes a year ago. Oh, how did you tell your role from the way they carry themselves? How could you tell their nature by the way they're dressed? We're burning time, so y'all are getting like a mental image. But think about like what was your character like before they put on a uniform? What were they like in their civilian days, which was almost a year ago at this point? How does their nature reflect how they dress? How does their role reflect how they walk? For stats, if you chose a sergeant, you get a +1. If you chose a junior lieutenant, you don't. But you're not putting anything to medals, just skill, guts, and luck. You can see here a sergeant gives you the option. Junior lieutenant gives you the options. You can if you have like a junior lieutenant,
Could
you don't
get
have
a
any,
+1
Could a +1
if
but
I get a
if you get a
-1.
-1. For a sergeant, you can put a +2 or a -1, or any order where that the numbers added together are still 0. Or for a sergeant, the numbers added together come to a 1. The highest the stats can go is 3. The lowest they can go is 2. I would recommend you don't let any of the stats go above 2 or below 1, just at the start, and just let that kind of be.
Just going with the zeros.
And so,
all
You-
threes.
Below -1?
so I'm going to below -1.
Okay.
Yeah. So for junior lieutenant, I'm going to let myself have a -1 on one of the.
I'm going to do a -1 in luck, which I think is probably a terrible idea.
Probably terrible. Yeah.
I like it.
And our medals are currently at 0. And
I just
so
got zeros across the board. I'm talented.
it says here to take the oath, stand yourself and administer. We're on mic, so I'm not going to have you all stand. And I didn't print this part out for all of you. But the oath that they would have read is exactly, I, name here, promise to rise to the defense of my motherland, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. As a fighting man of the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army, I promise to defend it bravely, skillfully, with dignity and honor, sparing neither my blood nor my life itself for the achievement of total victory over our enemies. And it does, like, in sick, like that, SIC. That it was the oath they had to say was gendered that way. So the situation in Trud Guernica, that's where we find ourselves. We've been at this for a year. After accelerated training, you were thrown immediately into the war. Your first duty station was a hellhole called Trud Guernica. That was basically on the front lines for 6 months. Mud alternated with ice, you flew out of open fields, and women died terrible deaths right before your helpless eyes. Their planes turned into torches by anti-aircraft artillery or German night fighters. You lost a lot of friends. You flew every night. Beginning here, on the back of your character sheets, you have marks. Normally, if we were playing a full game, we wouldn't start with any marks, and you would develop those over the course of play. However, because we're doing this as a one-shot, you will have 7 of these checked off.
7?
7. You can check them off any way, as long as the very last one, embrace death and face your final destiny, is left open. So check off the ones you would like to talk about, and we're going to talk about these marks that you have picked up since Trud Guernica, before we arrive at Pashka.
These are all intended to be separate events.
These
correct?
These are each separate events that left a mark on you.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't get these all at once.
So witness the death of a comrade and suffer the death of a friend or lover can't be the same death.
They will be they are different deaths. Yes.
There's lots of deaths.
You have been flying every single night, and you have seen a lot at this point. And where it says tell a war story, that war story can be at any point in time and can even be told in perspective of you in the 1980s giving an interview. So you can embellish it, you can change it, you can fill it with your own bias. It's just a story that you're going to share at the table of something your character did. Same thing with telling a story home. That's just completely up to you to just, that you just have to share that. You're going to also advance your characters 4 times, encouraging them to take no more than 2 from each category and explaining the benefits of each. Do not change the duty station, and you're less prepared to roll with that. I'm not prepared to roll with that. So of all of those, we're not, it's called moving west. Don't check that one off because we're not moving west. We're playing at this duty station. It's the one I'm ready to run. The duty stations, we can either move west when we advance and we'll just go to the next page, or we move when we complete all the missions at this station, of which there are 6. Feel free to ask them why they're promoted or how they got that medal. So if you picked up any medals along the way, we'll also be describing that. So we're kind of accelerating the story. We're skipping the first 2 sessions to go right to session 3 and filling into this. And I understand we're all kind of learning the rules. We're like, no, but we're all learning the rules, so we'll be fine. When you earn medals, it's there at the top. There's the 4. You earn them left to right. And then that adds to your stat. And there's a ceremony each time and a reason you were given them. Regimental honors are given for specific duty stations. Everyone who leaves that duty station gets that medal. The first 2 we didn't get any medals for. That begins at this 3rd one. So that just kind of represents your progressions through the story. But also if you play a new character that is recruited and joins because your last character died, they won't have the medals from those last ones. You can use medals when you act up, and you can point to them on your chest and go, excuse me, I was here, or I was there, or I have this medal, so you are going to let me do this. All right? And you can use your seniority or the respect of your medals to let you go in a way that otherwise maybe a superior wouldn't let you. So this is where you were looking at those moves that you're really interested in, Joe.
I'm so excited.
You'll be able to choose those. So I have, what did I say? It was 4 advancements, right?
I don't remember. Okay.
Yes. Ask them to advance their character 4 times. And regard slots, you open those slots, you can then fill them in between missions with a character that you hold to regard, and you'll always have a +1 towards them whenever you roll towards that person or plane. Regard doesn't have to be positive. You might regard them with lust, you might regard them with envy. And you'll write down an adjective what that regard looks like, but you can add that into a character. But when you take that as deepening ties, you're just opening up the slot.
So my slot is open, but I don't have
you don't
to add
have
something.
to have anyone in there. You can,
and I can add it at any time.
Yeah, you have. If you don't have that, you don't have the option to do any regard.
Got it.
Maybe I should have, at least 0 luck, or maybe I should just roll with it.
I think you should keep your negative luck. I think it adds character.
How would you feel about? Is this reasonable to have a character that has a medal but doesn't feel like she earned it?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
Sweet.
exactly what I did. Yeah. We both have medals that we didn't necessarily earn.
Crap like
That's
that
great.
happens where you did something and you survived, and they went, "Congratulations for surviving the mission. Here's a medal." And you're like,
My story is that I was working. We did something. The mission was successful, but everyone except me died because I'm the coward and I didn't. I ran away.
right.
But I got awarded the medal because
you
they
survived.
We need to reward someone for this.
You're a hero.
Yeah, you're a hero. You did the thing.
So my medals is +1 now, right?
Yeah. So your medals will be up to +1.
I feel like my character actually probably did earn it, but she feels like she didn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's I like that. I like a bit of a survival skill.
Yeah. That maybe she fixed the planes that made the mission successful.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. But because she wasn't on that mission, she doesn't feel like
So
she earned it.
you're a bit of a grease monkey then. A bit
Yeah,
more
yeah,
of a
a bit of a-
mechanic out
yeah.
of that. Cool.
I'm pretty sure I just have a lot of chutzpah.
And I'm gonna have Fortune's Fool.
You-
Choose a
chutzpah.
single move.
That's a good
Replace
word.
the rolled stat with
That's
plus luck when you
that's
trigger
used
it.
in.
So I can trigger Fortune's Fool and roll with luck instead of another stat whenever I trigger. that move.
Chutzpah is actually a stat in Paranoia.
I know. I've read the books, but I haven't had a chance to DM it yet.
So going through some of these marks, we don't have to go through all of them because it will take a whole lot of time. But is there anything there as you're checking off that you'd really like to share of something that's happened to your airwoman? in the last year at Turgunica.
Well, I already shared how I got my Medal of Valor. I was
Mhm.
the
I
only
did too.
survivor in a situation where everyone else died.
You were the escort for the person doing the attack run, and the person doing the wayfinding, because they're teams of 3 planes, and you were the wing woman who was supposed to be distracting the spotlights and keeping them going, and they were wayfinding and going to their attack run, and you just got
Bolted.
the hell out of there.
Yeah.
They still got their target, and the mission was a success, but those other 2 planes didn't come back.
Correct. I got a medal and a promotion out of it, and I didn't earn.
So you're going to be squad lead if you're the only one who got a promotion out
I'm
of
a
it.
lieutenant.
Yeah.
I definitely don't deserve
Yeah.
it, but I am
Excellent.
one.
Neil, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Not necessarily. A lot of my marks seem of take a friend or take a lover, suffer the death of a friend or lover. I feel like most of these are all like kind of tied together. Witness the death of a comrade. I took some of those ones, so I feel like she kind of fell for one of her fellow mates and was really enjoying it until the plane went down.
So, I have here some final questions. As a final step in character creation, ask them what has changed about their character's appearance after a year of hard fighting. So, from the day you arrived for training, of where you got 4 months of training that would have normally taken another pilot 3 years, to today now, a year later, we have flown every single night. What has changed about your character's appearance after a year of hard fighting? And I'll have a follow-up question as well from a list of questions I'm going to give each of us, and then one of you can ask me these questions as well, since I'm also creating my character. Which my guy, she some of the marks I had suffered death of a friend of her lover, shared a premonition. I shared a premonition about that mission, Joshua, that you're. I need this cheat sheet of names so I can call you by your character's names.
Sparrow.
Sparrow.
That's my nickname.
So Sparrow, Marina. I had a real bad feeling about that mission before you headed out. And then 2 of those planes didn't come back. And I shared it with people. In fact, maybe I shared that premonition with you, and that caused you to bolt. As you got a little superstitious about it, because I had this dream where you all died. And then also the unvarnished truth was another mark. And after that premonition, I think I called you out for being a coward. I told the unvarnished truth, and I'm keeping a record of your actions now. And changed posts for the wrong reasons. I feel like I was
So
part
you have
of the
different marks than I do.
yeah. I was
That's
part of the
interesting.
rear echelon, and I've changed posts to be on the front line and flying with these planes. But it's but I've done it for all the wrong reasons. I've done it for information and for career advancement, for all these other it's not
The glory of it?
Yeah,
I have one. Inform the authorities. Perhaps maybe I inform
yeah. We
the
have
authorities
different
about
marks
you.
for different natures. There are different marks for different natures.
Yeah, I took Give Your Aircraft a Personality, which I'm really looking forward to playing with.
Oh, so
So
give your
neat.
aircraft a personality. Do you have a regard slot that's open?
I do.
So what's the name of your aircraft?
Oh, no. I have to come up with a
Stalin's
name.
Fury.
That sounds great.
So so write a name of your of your aircraft.
Okay.
And then
Anywhere, or-
beside that regard, write
What's a regard?
what.
Where's the slot for a guard? Oh, I found it. Okay.
So you have 2. Like I blank your plane the most. So how do you regard your plane, and also give your plane a name?
Okay. Can I just use Stalin's regard?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I have a question. Just because I need to pick a move, and the one I'm interested in, I don't fully understand how it works.
Absolutely.
So the move I'm interested in picking is Ghosts. Choose a dead comrade and hold 3. I don't know what that means.
Hold 3 is a hold is something that you'll stack through play that you can cash in on a future roll to get yourself a plus
So
1
I
forward.
basically just have 3.
You have 3 holds. You cannot use them all at the same time, only one move at a time, but you will have 3 holds that you can hold on to that in a future roll you can cash one of those holds in for a plus 1 forward.
It says here specifically, whenever I ask a friend for help, I can spend my holds 1 for 1 to succeed as if I had rolled 10 or more. Every time I do this, I'm also harmed or marked by the experience. Basically, I'm getting help from one of the ghosts of my friends.
Either it's a
instead of-
flashback or some memory of yours, but even just going to those memories will hurt you.
So the people who died in that mission that I got promoted for
They're still
are my
helping you.
3 ghosts.
Yeah.
And they're still helping me, and
Nice.
but they make me feel guilty.
Yeah.
I've decided to change the name of my plane.
Okay, great.
I want it to be Stalin's North Star.
Stalin's North Star. Excellent.
I want a little bit of irony.
And
with
how
the
do
name.
you regard
I
Stalin's?
respect it.
You respect your plane.
I respect my plane. She like always pulls through. I don't know how she does it.
Yeah, you're like, you're a good old girl. You're doing well.
Yeah, yeah.
I also want to say that that one of the marks I picked was suffer the death of a friend or lover. I suffered the death of a comrade. That was, you know how that turned out. I got a medal for it. But I also suffered the death of a friend or lover. Since I mentioned I'm a raging lesbian, that one of the reasons I joined the army or joined this brigade is because my lover no longer. She died. How she died?
It's the war.
It's the war.
The war is messy.
Yeah, the war is messy.
Did she die in the Great Purge? Did she die before the war?
I'm thinking she died because she got identified as a lesbian and put into one of those institutions that you were
And
talking
just never
about.
came back. So
And just never came back.
So before the war, late in the 30s, when you were a younger teenager, and she was just carted away. I like the V for Vendetta characters.
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
I think
She was carted away. I was not, and that made me feel really bad. Maybe I was not carted away because I said, "Oh no, I'm not in love with a woman. I'm in love with this guy over here."
I mean, this is what we'll see in the informal interviews: is you say what you have to say.
I think unlike, real life or every other role-playing game I usually play, I think I'm going to be straight for once.
Gasp!
We both said gas at the same time, so
So you normally always play a lesbian?
Yeah, it just kind of happens.
I understand. I've never actually played a female character before in all of my years as a role player.
I've never either, actually.
yeah.
Normally
Just
end up
one
picking
I
a
like
male
about
of
this
some
is
sort.
this game it helps you empathize with the different, and also Jason Morningstar has a great little chapter on the way, especially war history is told from an extremely masculine lens, and you do not hear war stories from the perspective of the women, the many women who served during World War II, and so this story, Night Witches, and the story of the Night Witches is not the only story involving women in the war. Those stories just don't get told.
Yeah.
And so, anyways,
Well, now we will tell them.
I have a regard slot that I'm going to fill in, Joshua. I am afraid of Sparrow the most. You get people killed, and you you don't deserve your rank, you don't deserve your medal, you don't deserve your responsibilities, you cannot be trusted. And it's not that I don't trust you, it's I am afraid that because I serve under you, you're going to get me killed one day.
All probably true.
So with that, whenever I'm rolling against you or with you or for you or anything, I have +1.
I mean,
any rolls that involve you.
I have a +1 to medals and 0 in all the other stats.
Whereas Joe, whenever you roll anything with that plane, as long as you're in that plane when it happens, you will always get +1 on that plane. Should anything happen to that plane, though,
It's
you
going to be
will
bad.
immediately get harmed
Yeah.
for losing that plane.
I think it's quite
love that plane.
indicative of my character that she has 0 in all of her stats, but somehow +1 in medals.
So Sparrow, I have a question here. I'm just going through a list of questions. I'm going to give each of you one because we're running short. I want to wrap up this first episode. Yep. What happened the last time a crowd of brother airmen wolf whistled at you?
Well,
I think it's the 216 is an all men.
I'm gonna say what happened was I'll talk again about one of my marks. Let's see. I definitely fought against that very harshly. Somebody help me out here.
Because you described yourself too as also being very conventionally beautiful.
I am
Even
conventionally
when you're
beautiful, but I am
not
very
grooming that?
against the patriarchy.
Yeah.
In fact, I have one of my marks is speak truth to a power, and in my mind
and you
that
buck
was
against that, too,
was me
so.
bucking against the the power was that, well, you know, the power of the male patriarchy.
This
and
might
I'm
be how
speaking
you got
truth
one of
to
your
it.
advances in those other sessions we didn't play that we skipped over here.
Yeah, maybe.
You have 4 advances. One of them you can advance whenever you buck against patriarchy. So one of your brother airmen wolf whistled at you when you were, say, visiting one of their air bases for supplies.
Oh, I kicked his ass.
Oh, he just
I wailed on him. I beat the living
Just-
in front of his friends.
yeah. Did he have a glass jaw? Did he just like go down in one?
Oh
hit?
yeah, he went down in one hit.
Yeah, and then he just started crying for his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which may be my speaking truth to power, or more likely, it probably was acting against my best interest because I may have gotten
maybe a bit of both.
maybe a bit of both. You know, I acted against my best interest by beating up this guy, and then I got called into one of those informal interviews where I spoke truth to power. I was like, well, look, he was I outrank. You know, I have this rank, and he shouldn't be catcalling me.
Lyra, I have a question for you. Whose picture will you tape to your plane's dash?
My granddad.
Your granddad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I write back to him all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so wholesome.
It really is.
Oh,
It's so
God.
wonderful.
Joe,
Yes.
when we search your footlocker, what surprising thing do we find?
Oh, that's a good one.
You want to think about that?
Yeah, can you come back to me in a
While
second?
Joe's thinking about that, the two of you there, Neil, Joshua, have a look at those questions and ask Vera one of them.
Okay, wait.
Because I guess Vera is...
I've got it right here.
Vera comes from a very politically involved family, living in Moscow, very close to like the center of activity. Is very proper, showed up in very like pressed clothes to training. Has tried to this day to keep the uniform to be quite regimented. And even though she's not in her like proper like civilian clothes anymore, she still is very fastidious, almost neurotic to a point where there might be some duties that are not being done because she needs to look not clean and beautiful, but proper and presented. And it's very like stern in that way. And so a year having happened, how that's affected is, I mean, the lack of sleep is starting to catch up. Like that stress, that wound up spring at all times. Like
We've got your question.
You got to
for
give
you.
a bit, Farah. You got to give. So what's the question you'd like to ask?
When has your sexuality gotten you in trouble?
See, that's it. Oh, so it's gotten me in trouble when I have, I like to think if Vera's very, because there's a lot of quotes in here that I'm taking inspiration from as well. The many of the women who signed up believe that, oh, well, we're going to sign up for the army, we're going to find our husbands, and then Vera showed up to an all-woman regiment full of lesbians.
No,
And me.
She's not a lesbian. Are you a
no,
lesbian?
listen,
I
as
am.
far
Yeah, you
as far as Vera is concerned, as far as Vera
Lyra's
is
totally
concerned,
hooking up with people.
Listen, Vera is a problem. Vera is a problem. So she showed up to this regiment, and there's not a single man in sight. And I think that's gotten her in trouble. Where, despite the fact that she's ratting people out to the NKVD and trying to be all that, she's doing so in taking opportunities to leave the base to other regiments or to go into a village to find that man that's not on this regiment. And it's put her in places of even danger or letting down her own fellow airwomen or being volunteering for jobs that she maybe shouldn't. Later on, not yet in history, but the Night Witches, when the Navy was trapped on the Black Sea, the call went out for volunteers to fly during the day, as well as still doing their night missions to deliver supplies. And the Night Witches unanimously volunteered to deliver day supplies to those men who were all trapped out in the water at risk of themselves, flying in broad daylight. Yeah, I think Vera would throw herself in harm's way just to find a husband.
Well, she won't find
Out
one
of the
here.
stress, not necessarily out of out of sexuality, but out of that stress of having to uphold her duties that everyone has told her all her life she has to do if she's to be respected. Mm-hmm. And how the hell is she supposed to be respected if she can't find a husband and have children by the time this war is over? And maybe getting pregnant will get her out of this regiment. So
What's interesting for
it
my
won't,
character?
but
Because you were saying basically that
I'm just trying to snowball those thoughts one after another on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like she's a ball of stress. It's gonna snap.
It's interesting. You were saying a lot of the, it's a sign of the times. A lot of the women in this all-women brigade ultimately were lesbians because.
Well, we just don't know, too.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we
mean,
just don't
there
know.
was-
They may not have been lesbians, but they may have resorted to that.
Well,
because
just
they
like
were-
a lot of men
Yeah.
in war. Like there was this great a book of photography that came out from the Pacific Theater with the Marines. Was it the Marines? The Americans who are fighting in the Pacific Theater, and the amount of nudity and playing around that happened, because it was just these men on a tropical island for a few years by themselves.
Yeah.
And it's and young too. Some
Yeah.
of them like 18, 19, 20.
Gay or not,
they
they're
don't
going-
know their sexuality yet, and
Yeah.
discovering that. And a lot of these women coming into this Air Force for the first time in their lives are given responsibilities and freedom and liberty, and with that a chance to explore and discover. And maybe they're not, and maybe they are, and maybe they don't know, and they don't really have time, because also you're flying every night, and maybe Vera isn't straight. Maybe Vera doesn't know, because Vera has no emotional vocabulary to describe how she feels. All she knows is the clock is ticking. This war is killing everyone, and she needs a husband by the time the war's over.
Which is interesting because my character may be one of the only, like, she was definitely interested in girls before the war started. So
Yeah.
that's a different...
And Vera is afraid of Sparrow, and maybe that continues on to not just afraid of Sparrow and how she doesn't belong in the rank that she has over Vera, but also like, I should be a lieutenant. Why are you a lieutenant?
But maybe also
the fact
in
that
Sparrow's confidence
there's a
in her.
jealousy in that you know who you are, and Vera just knows what the state tells her to be.
Right.
I feel for Lyra, one of mine here is publicly shame a comrade, and I feel like maybe she took an act on an appreciation of one of her comrades, the one that maybe she fell in love with, maybe made a pass, like a kiss or something, and it was not okay around the people that she was around.
Yeah.
And so, especially that time period, a bunch of people saw it. And was like,
It does have a note in the book that what might happen is there might be a talking to by your captain to keep that in check. And then if that doesn't go answer to, it might lead to an informal interview. But regardless, outing someone for being queer would be just the uttermost level of betrayal, because of the circumstances that would follow from something like that. And
perhaps
the
she wasn't
fallout.
watching and she made a pass for a kiss,
Yeah.
and there happened to be people around.
And half the time
that
people
went real
were
wrong.
being interviewed were absolutely innocent. It was just you were next to someone who was doing something next to someone who was doing something, and it just kind of daisy chained their way down. So that was a very long answer to a very short question. So thank you for that.
I think I have my
your
answer.
Foot Locker answer.
My Foot Locker answer. I think I have curlers in my Foot Locker.
Curlers.
Curlers.
Oh.
Like the old-fashioned, like, overnight curlers.
Yeah.
with
Right?
The monkey,
Right?
the grease
Uh-huh.
monkey, who
The
gets
grease
her,
monkey with the
Get your grease
curlers.
monkey
who has
with
your
the
arm up
curlers.
to her
I like
elbow
it. I
inside of
like
a
it.
plane at all
Yep.
times, and then sometimes on recreation, everyone's having a sleep. You wake up a little bit, and you close the curtain around your bunk, and you get out your mirror,
Can I do my hair?
and you just try a little bit of the, yeah.
Yeah, just a bit of a taste of home. But not literally. I'm
I
not
really
eating them.
like these women that we've met.
I
These are four very, very different people that are here for very different reasons.
It's
Lyra,
wonderful.
Lyra, I see her very much as a prim, proper, graceful, by the books kind of individual. The eyes are on her, and she'll be damned if she's going to make anybody look bad, kind of a thing.
The situation. So now we're going to wrap up. We're going to continue next week where we arrive. The situation in Pashkovska. I know we haven't done a whole lot of role playing, but that is going to kick into in the second episode. We should now have really interesting, well-differentiated characters. Hopefully, this took about half an hour.
I think we succeeded at the
We definitely-
Took a little longer
and
than half an hour.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did plenty of role playing for a session that we didn't have any role playing in.
Here is a thing for me to read out. Pashkovska was once a civilian airfield, now about 10 kilometers from the major city of Krasnodar. Now it is home to the 588th and their brother unit, the 218th Night Bomber Regiment. Resources are shared uneasily,
and unevenly. When they aren't mocking you, they are stealing from you. When we come back next week, I will introduce us to our duty station, Pashkovska. Now, what's great is we do have a ranking member, so we do have someone who will be assigning us our roles when we go to our mission. I will describe next week, because we're still learning the rules, the day and night cycle of this game. This game is played in 2 phases, a day phase and a night phase, and then a day phase and on repeat until we're done. I will introduce you to the Pashkova duty sheet. We'll fill it out together, and I'll be allowing now the players to take the lead and tell me how things are going. I've got some questions to answer. Based on their characters, we'll choose 2 threats to push, cherry picking the most interesting angles of the group. Well, that's just for me. I shouldn't be saying that out loud. And if you want to draw the airbase, we're absolutely allowed to. And once we have a characters, a couple of threats, and the airbase ready, we'll be ready to start playing. We will begin at dawn with a debrief after a mission. I will appoint Sparrow as the section leader. And Sparrow, I'll be asking you what you did when you saw a D section fly into a solid wall of flak ahead of them. If they charged ahead, if they turned back, So I got a couple of questions here to ask you. When we return next week, we will arrive, and I'm going to do a little reading ahead so I'm not just reading these things out loud for you. We will be arriving at our duty station in Pashkovska. We will begin taking our missions and going through our day and our night. We will likely next week it'll be a half an hour in day, half an hour in night, and we'll do that for 2 more episodes, and we'll see how much of this duty station we get done. And it's going to be really interesting. Dear listener, this game can be played long form very easily. We have 3 more duty stations after this that will take us right to Berlin at the end of the war. So if you want to take us to Berlin, head to patreon.com/terriblewarriors, become a supporter of any amount, and vote on this month's poll. Every month you can vote for the next game we will record. So you're kind of voting for the 2 months from now what game we'll be listening to in the podcast. The first choice is always the game we are currently playing on the podcast. The second choice is a game we will like to return to that we played on the podcast. The third choice is a runner-up from a previous poll that came in second that I want to play, but it just barely didn't make it, so expect Dogs in the Vineyard to show back up there. And the fourth choice is a new game we have never played and has not been on the poll. So that's sort of how the formula goes. So if you'd like us to continue with Night Witches and to continue with these airwomen and to continue all the way to Berlin, vote for that. And as for the other 3, I don't know what those choices are at the time I record this, but they're up there. So check it out at patreon.com/terriblewarriors. That's the pitch. That's it. This is the end of episode 1. Thank you for joining us here on Night Witches, here on the Terrible Warriors. Thank you, of course, to my airwomen here at the table of the 588. I have been joined by
Joshua Barbeau of Chaotic Rogue Entertainment,
who is playing
Sparrow. Marina Tsvetkova, otherwise known as Sparrow.
Neil Tavares, Neil T. Tattoos, playing Lyra Kazakova.
Joe Drummond playing Mariam Palmilova.
And I'm Justin Ecock playing Vera. Just Vera, thanks. We'll see you next week. Bye. The Terrible Warriors has episodes out every Tuesday. Usually, it's the start of the year. Give us a chance to get back into the groove of things. We'll return next week with the 2nd episode of Night Witches. We're finally going on a mission with the airwomen of the 588. Night Witches is written by Jason Morningstar, published by Bully Pulpit Games. Go check out that game. Try it for yourself. It's really something to read. Let them know the Terrible Warriors sent you. Follow us on Twitter at Dice Warriors. Don't forget about that Patreon account, patreon.com/Terrible Warriors. You can help pick our next game. And of course, there's our Discord channel. You can hang out with us, spend some time with us, maybe join in on a listener-run game. The link to it to join our channel at terriblewarriors.com. Today's Terrible Warriors and your airwomen of the 588 were Joshua Barbeau, Neil Tavares, Joe Drummond, and Justin Ecock. We'll be back next week with our first mission in our Night Witches campaign, right here on the Terrible Warriors. Yeah, I really like. This is why I love Powered by Apocalypse games. Is the character creation always is like the strongest point of the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes the games fall apart in play. Depending, I don't think this is going to be one of those examples. But you really like the questions are designed to invest you into them and just like they want you to love who these people are, which is going to make it so much more painful when things
they
go bad
all
for
die.
them. 'Cause it's just going to be bad.
My poor plane's gonna die.
So Vera will not be at the duty station at the beginning. She's off
doing
base,
Vera things.
doing her thing. She's maybe hanging out with the 218 trying to find a husband, right? So whenever the GM is playing, they always have to explain why their character isn't there. So it'll just be the three of you. So I'll be full on GM. Vera she has taken a transfer assignment over to the Brother Regiment to find supplies. So I'll explain that at the beginning of the
Those are
episode.
some pretty good supplies.
For those listening in, hey there, Seatown. Hey, I'm Matt Baumgartner. Thanks for hanging out. We are. You're just going to hear a click as I turn the audio off and turn it over to the next project. And thanks for joining us. We've got 3 more hours to record, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Back
Neat.
in a mo.